It's time for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the show focusing on fishing, hunting, outdoor recreation, destinations, and conservation in the region where you live and play. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you by Max Lure Company, Sportsman's Warehouse, and Wallowa County. And now, let's see what's going on in the field and on the water with your host, John Cruz.
Welcome to the show. Not that you need a reminder, but we are 1 week away from Christmas. And if you're stressed, I'm hoping the next hour will settle your nerves because we're going to talk about the great outdoors. And one topic we're going to really hit on today is elk. Turns out in Montana, they've got too many of them, while in the Blue Mountains bordering Oregon and Washington, they don't have nearly enough. We'll be talking to two guests about this situation. The first is John Sullivan. He's with the Montana chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks looks to change the way that elk hunting tags are distributed. The problem is, if this proposal goes forward, it's going to benefit landowners and outfitters, but not do-it-yourself public land hunters. Meanwhile, in the Blue Mountains, elk numbers are as low as they've been in 30 years, and of 125 elk calf collared this spring, only 11 remain alive. The big problem? Predators. We're talking cougars and bears in particular, but a couple of Washington State Fish and Wildlife commissioners don't think this is necessarily a crisis, and we should just lower the goalposts in terms of how many elk there ought to be in the Blues and not worry about those predators. Bo Olson is a guide who hunts in this area for bear and elk, and he's going to weigh in about what's going on in the Blue Mountains and how the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, through their commission, is really mismanaging the situation. I'll warn you up front, Bo's pretty fired up about this, and it's going to show in the conversation ahead. I also need to point out that his opinion is not necessarily the opinion of this show, though I do have extreme concerns about the positions stated recently by our two newest Washington Fish and Wildlife Commissioners, Lorna Smith and Fred Kuntz, who seem to have a bias against hunters and hunting and seem to favor predators over ungulates. Why Governor Jay Inslee appointed these two to the commission? That's an open question that has not yet been answered. Eric Magnuson is back for another Max Minute. We'll be talking ice fishing again, and this time he's going to give you some ideas about where you might want to drop a line through the ice in the states of Idaho and Montana. Our final guest today will be Ryan Sparks. He is a hunting and fishing maniac, lives in the Portland, Oregon area. He's also a tournament bass fisherman, and we're going to catch up with what he's been up to the last couple of months because he's been both a busy and successful hunter and angler. Throw in one last Sportsman's Warehouse trivia question of the week before Christmas, and I'd say we've got a great show coming your way. So let's get it started with another edition of Sportsman Spotlight.
Alaska, not for the faint of heart. David Sparks, Sportsman Spotlight. Don Coleus lived in Alaska for many years and has told me story after story involving hunting, fishing, as well as close encounters that you might not particularly like. Last time we talked, she was telling me about her husband who was fishing on a river when a huge brown bear started chasing him. He did get away, but he was quite shaken. So then I asked her if her encounters with bears, moose, wolves ever resulted in injury. Listen to the response.
We never got mauled or anything, but I had an acquaintance that got killed. And that was Marcy Trent. I had run a triathlon that she was in down in Soldotna, and she was a terrific runner. She lived in Anchorage, and she was running with her son and grandson. And Marcy was very good, and she was ahead of them. They were running up in the foothills, and they heard her scream. Her son told his son, who was 8, I believe, go up the tree and stay there. Climb that tree and you don't come down. And he went up to help his mom. The bear killed them both. And some other hikers came along, and the boy came down, and then they found the grandmother and father. There was a moose kill up there. I mean, you just had to be really, really careful about that.
David Sparks, Sportsman Spotlight.
Enjoy a meal of wild Alaskan seafood delivered right to your door. Sea offers premium quality wild Alaskan fish and shellfish to include Copper River king and silver salmon, halibut, black cod, king crab, and of course, Copper River sockeye salmon. Order it blast frozen or smoked and experience a slice of Alaska for a special meal you won't forget. Buy your seafood now at SenaSea.com. That's SENASEA, SenaSea.com.
This is Bob. I can show you how to make $1,000 a day.
This is an alert. In 2018, 48 billion robocalls were placed to cell phones, and nearly 50% of those were scam-related. Scammers want money, personal information, and sensitive identity information. They use insurance and free vacation gimmicks as tools to get your cash and identities. Farmers, you have even more to lose when it comes to scams. Identity theft can really damage the day-to-day operations of the farm when your personal information is tied to farm accounts. If you're buying or selling items online, such as farm equipment, expect and know how to spot a potential scam. Watch for area codes that aren't local and make no sense. Another tip, scammers don't know farm lingo, so feel them out. Since robocalls are the #1 complaint to the Federal Communications Commission, the U.S. Senate is now discussing a bill to make robocalls a criminal action, which would stop the calls. We urge you to call your senator today. Robocalls are robber calls.
backcountryhunters.org. Join the fight for our public lands and waters today.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. Our next stop is Montana, and yes, we are talking elk again. The person we're going to talk about elk and elk hunting with is John Sullivan. He's the chairman of the Montana chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And folks, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is all about public land access and preservation and letting you hunt and fish on these public lands too. Check out more about that group at backcountryhunters.org. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about a current proposal that's being considered by the Commission at Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And it's all about elk hunting permits, especially in limited entry areas. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about the current state of elk populations in Montana and how elk hunting tags are currently distributed.
Sure, yeah. The elk population in Montana is, it's as high as I can remember it. We're way over our objectives, our population objectives set by FWP and the biologists. So there's a lot of elk here, a lot of elk in Montana. The challenge right now is that there's not a lot of public land elk hunters who are complaining about too many elk, right? You don't hear guys come out of the field and say, boy, I saw too many bulls on public today.
Right.
So a lot of these elk are concentrated on private pieces or landlocked pieces of public that are very difficult to get to.
So Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, I know they're trying to simplify hunting rules, and they also want to address this very situation that you're talking about. So how do they propose to do this, and why does BHA oppose the way they want to do it?
Sure. So before I even get into the details of it, let's take a step backwards.
Sure.
The reason that a lot of these proposals are coming out is in an effort to meet the 2005 elk population objectives set by the elk management plan from 2005. So we have a nearly 17-year-old elk management plan that hasn't been updated since then. These population objectives were based using on biological carrying capacity. They were also affected by landowner tolerance of elk and whether elk are accessible to the public hunter. So there's kind of some unique things. They're blending biology and economics into these elk numbers to try to find a balance that works for everybody. I can't remember exactly the time, 2007 legislature, maybe 2009, the legislature passed a law requiring Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to meet these elk objective numbers. And so you have now politics involved in this thing, which makes it very difficult for FWP.
Right.
So they're trying everything they can to try to reduce these elk numbers to follow the law that they're mandated to follow. We've done, we have 6 months of elk hunting in Montana right now. We got shoulder seasons. We got cow elk tags all over the state you can buy over the counter. You've got all kinds of opportunity to kill an elk, and nothing's working. The populations continue to grow. And part of that, the reason for that is just that we're not killing enough elk. And we're not killing enough elk because people aren't finding enough elk, and maybe their access is different than it used to be. There's new land ownership in the state who is buying property because of the number of elk on it and not how many cows it can carry anymore. So things are changing quickly in Montana. So recently, in an effort to try to get these numbers down and kind of recognizing the landscape, the FWP has proposed that in any district they consider over objective for the elk populations, that they will take and provide either sex over-the-counter licenses that can be used only on private land.
Gotcha.
I think there's about 14 districts across our state that are considered over objective. And some of those districts are currently draw districts, special permit districts. And so that's kind of a slap in the face to those of us who have been, wanting our whole lives, for example, to hunt somewhere. Montana's got some pretty awesome elk hunting, and to get a special permit and opportunity to go kill a big bull elk is a real special thing and can be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for folks. And you've been working real hard to draw these tags, and all of a sudden they're going to start giving over-the-counter on private. It really changes the landscape of how this thing looks. At the same time, what they're going to do is then cut or eliminate the number of special draw tags on public land.
Gotcha. So for everybody who's a public land hunter, the ability or the opportunity, if this passes, is going to be reduced. I've heard up to 50%. Is that correct?
Yeah, in some of those special draw districts, they're going to cut the number of special draw permits by as much as 50%. Those special draw permits are good only on public land. They will provide unlimited tags for private property.
Right. But the days of knocking on a door and getting permission to hunt on private land, that's long gone. What's going to happen, I presume, is that these landowners are going to lease out their property to outfitters, and you're going to have to pay a whole lot of money with your general license to hunt on these lands for these elk, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the fear, right? That the landowners are going to realize the value of these elk tags. They'll sell access. Landowners that are involved in block management may find it more valuable and easy for them to lease out to an outfitter. I can't blame them for wanting to make money off their property. I get that part of it. But this proposal from FWP just furthers that divide between the private landowners, the public land hunters, and in the end, it doesn't solve the problem of reducing our elk numbers. There's a very good, well-known, well-established, proven scientific method to reduce wildlife populations. You target the cows. You target the females in the population, and that can quickly reduce the numbers. And giving bull elk tags on private property over the counter does not achieve the stated goal of reducing elk numbers.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're talking to John Sullivan, the chairman of the Montana chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, about proposed changes to elk hunting laws in Montana that are being considered by their commission that could result in reduced opportunity for do-it-yourself hunters on public lands and make elk hunting a rich man's game. You'll have to go through an outfitter and hunt on private land if this passes, at least to a large extent. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. I almost feel like this is Groundhog Day and that I've had this almost exact same discussion. Didn't something very similar to this just get defeated in the state legislature last year? And wasn't it defeated again several years ago in Montana?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a bill introduced by, I believe it was Kazmaier, that would have allowed anybody in any district that's over objective to provide bull elk tags on private property. That was soundly defeated in the legislature. Sportsman showed up en masse to shut that thing down. Yeah, so not only a few months ago was that thing roundly defeated, we thought it was behind us, and it's really troubling to see the folks over at FWP trying to push this thing through using a different mechanism.
Well, depending what station you're listening to, it's either December 18th or December 19th. I know the commission heard some initial feedback on this. They're going to make a decision in February. What can hunters both in Montana and outside of Montana who plan DIY elk hunting trips on public land do to steer Montana FWP away from this proposal?
The best thing you can do is get activated, stay engaged. There's a number of methods to contact the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks director. You can call them, you can email them. We have a Fish, Wildlife, and Parks commission. There's 7 of them who represent the state. Call them, email them. Stay engaged with the public process as they go through this thing. The final decision won't be made until sometime in February, and that is when the rubber is going to meet the road. So right now, we're going to do our best to steer this ship in the right direction. and then we just need Sportsman to join us along the way.
Another suggestion, folks, is to join the fight by getting involved with backcountry hunters and anglers. As you just heard, they're going to be fighting this big time in Montana, and you can fight it wherever you live. The website to go to find out more and to join, backcountryhunters.org. John, thanks for fighting the good fight for all of us who love to hunt on public land and get the most opportunity we can.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
From a bull elk ripping a bugle across a valley to wing beats on a duck marsh, public lands and waters are integral to our outdoor heritage. Become a member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and stand up for our public lands and waters. Visit backcountryhunters.org today.
If your favorite season is deer, if your favorite salad is meat salad, if your favorite gifts come wrapped in fur or scales, if you're dreaming of a white and camo Christmas, then you'd fit right in at Sportsman's Warehouse. And lucky for you, Sportsman's is offering amazing deals all season long. So visit your local store or go online to sportsmans.com and gear up for an unforgettable holiday.
Hunting is conservation. At the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, we salute hunters for providing the majority of conservation funding across the U.S. Join us for our annual fundraising banquet to benefit wildlife and the mission of the RMEF.
You're back with more of the great outdoors on Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
It's time for another Max Minute, brought to you every week by Max Lure. The topic again is ice fishing, and the guest again is Eric Magnuson, pro staffer for Max Lure, who loves ice fishing. You should also check out the YouTube channel that he and others with Clum Dog Outdoors have put together. Eric, great to have you back on the air.
Thanks for having me again.
So we've talked in the last couple of weeks about destinations in Washington State for ice fishing. We've talked about lures to use to catch fish under the ice. This week, I want to talk about some lakes in Idaho and Montana that you'd recommend for ice fishing this winter. Throw some out there.
Yeah, so Idaho, close to us, we hit Spirit Lake, we hit Twin Lakes, we hit Hayden Lakes, are one of my favorite lakes.
And as we're going through these lakes, why don't you tell our listeners exactly what kind of fish they're going to catch out of there, too?
Yeah, multiple trout are in these lakes, as well as panfish. We target a lot of crappie over there. I like chasing big bluegill myself. Some of those lakes will also hold decent-sized planted Chinook.
You know, crappie, notoriously hard, for me at least, to catch in cold water. Do they bite pretty well under the ice?
They do, and there's typical times I target them because, they can be a tough fish to catch. And I have my times where I target them, certain lures, and certain times of the day for sure.
And do they tend to be suspended or down towards the bottom in the winter?
A lot of them are suspended. So some of them are not even a foot under the ice.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go. I've been doing this wrong all along. All right. All right. Getting back to destinations, let's cross the state line from Idaho into Montana. What are a few places that stand out there?
So there's Thompson Lake and there's Georgetown Lake. There's quite a few lakes in between those as well. And you're going to be catching all sorts of panfish. They have a big, healthy pike population, smallmouth, whitefish. Well, Lakers, too, lake trout as well.
Well, I love a smorgasbord, so that sounds like a lot of fun. And then, of course, we can't forget Cascade Lake. Do you expect more of those 2-3 pound jumbo perch to come out of there again this winter?
I do expect bigger ones to be coming out. The 3 pound did finally get hit this past winter. We've gotten multiple 2.5, 2 3/4 over the years at 16, 16.5, almost 17 inches. Big destination bucket triplets for most of us anglers. We've been doing it now for about 5 years, and I think if they start kicking in some regulations and putting some limits on some of these fishes that are being kept and killed, we'll start seeing a big comeback.
Hopefully, somebody from Idaho Department of Fish and Game is listening today and might consider doing that. In the meantime, folks, if you're looking for ice fishing destinations in the Gem State and the Treasure State, you just heard about some. And if you're looking for lures to use, go to maxlure.com. Check out what's available, including the Sonic bait fish, which you can find at a sporting goods store near you.
That's the sound you hear when a fish hits the new Sonic bait fish from Max Lure Company. This metal lure can be cast, trolled, or jigged and will catch just about anything that swims in the sea, the river, or the lake. The Sonic bait fish has a unique vibration and flutter that can be rigged in 7 different ways. With all sorts of eye-catching colors and weights available, you'll be reaching for the Sonic bait fish as your go-to lure. It's the Sonic bait fish. And that's another fish on, only from Max Lure Company.
You're back in with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. Earlier in the show, we talked to John Sullivan with the Montana chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers because they've got all sorts of elk in Montana. So many elk, as a matter of fact, they need to reduce the populations. We've got the exact opposite problem in the Blue Mountains bordering Oregon and Washington, where the elk herd numbers in Washington are at a historic low and elk calf mortality is through the roof. With us here to tell us more about the situation in the Blue Mountains is Bo Olson. He's the owner of Wilderness Expeditions, LLC, and he's been guiding for deer and elk on the Washington side of the Blues for 9 years now. Bo, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the platform and getting the word out.
Let's talk a little bit about the elk herd in the Blue Mountains. Now, historically, this has been managed to be a herd of 5,500 animals. It's only come close to that, once, between about 2011 and 2013. Let's talk about the status of that elk herd now. Where's it at?
It's on the decline, significant decline. It's being mismanaged by leaders who should not be controlling the Fish and Game Commission. Period. End of story. We have a all-time high predator problem that needs to be reduced significantly. It is impacting deer, elk, just unbelievable numbers. I've been doing this for 9 years, and to see the decline in those 9 years, it's heartbreaking. Granted, it's my livelihood. And then they take away spring bear hunting. Bears are a problem. Cougars are the number one problem. Then you bring in their ulterior motives. If Fish and Game could be transparent with Sportsman in Washington State, that would be wonderful. What would also be wonderful is if our game commission were actually outdoorsmen, fishermen, hunters, fisherwomen. That would be phenomenal for Washington sports. We have this great resource in the state of Washington. It's phenomenal. Beautiful country, beautiful animals, and we're watching them just get eaten alive, basically, by your pack of wolves. You got your cougar problem that's not being eradicated, and it needs to happen. We do our part every spring to get rid of these bears that are problems. You know, bears eat baby deer and baby elk constantly. So these bleeding hearts need to not have any say in what our sportsmen, what our future, what's right in front of us. Wildlife managers in Washington State, it's kind of a conundrum.
Hold on, Bo. You've given us a lot to unpack here, so let me help our listeners unpack it. So first off, folks, again, this elk herd in the Blues, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife wants to manage it at a level of 5,500 animals. This year, it's all the way down to 3,600 animals. It hasn't been this low in 30 years. One of the reasons, folks, is because of calf mortality. They collared 125 elk calves in the spring, and currently only 11 of those elk calves are alive, and 70% were eaten by cougars. A number of the rest of them were eaten by bears, and then the third predator that's been getting into them has been wolves. We're not talking about hunting being the problem here. Nobody's hunting elk calves except for cougars and bears and wolves. And the problem that Bo alluded to is that we have Fish and Wildlife commissioners that are basically saying there's no problem here. We'll just manage this as a smaller elk herd, and we don't need to do anything about the predators. And so this is the definition of insanity to me, the position that Lorna Smith and Fred Kuntz are taking. They're our newest Fish and Wildlife managers in Washington. What do you think the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife should be doing if they had a free hand to manage this elk herd?
Well, John, that's a loaded question, but I'm going to answer it. The immediate answer is to put people that run our wildlife commission, put hunters in that position. Hunters are ethical people, okay? We give and we take. We look for an opportunity that is
For some, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In my case, the blues, we have limited tags, right? Okay, we have limited tags because of the limited amount of animals that are now down there. Pretty soon, it's going to be down to, 1 tag, 3 tags, 5 tags. It already is getting it to that point. We need to get people in place in our fish and wildlife system that are sportsmen first, okay? Not bleeding hearts, not some hidden agenda. Let's get people in there that actually hunt for a living, hunt and fish or recreate for a living. Take their families, pass it on generation after generation. It's appalling to me, and it should be other sportsmen in the state of Washington to even tolerate these people being in our commission. Now, it starts at the top. Our governor, I'm not being political, he needs to go away. He's the worst thing that's happened to Eastern Washington and other parts of Washington, period, end of story. Now, he's the deciding vote because he won't put someone in a position that is a sportsman and has common sense and intellect and can make a decision to preserve these elk for futures to come.
Well, I think Governor Inslee's ears are burning. He is the one that appoints commissioners, and it should be pointed out, there's currently a vacancy that has not been filled for the Eastern Washington Commissioner, which historically has been a little bit more pro-hunting because, the rural area that Eastern Washington is. It's also worth noting that the current chairman of the commission, Larry Carpenter, his term has expired. He is serving at the whim of the governor. You heard from Brian Lim of the Sportsman's Alliance last week. He voted no on a spring bear hunt. He voted no on Columbia River gillnet reforms that would help endangered salmon and steelhead. And a lot of folks think it's because the governor is talking in his ear and telling him how to vote. So that's the current situation we have here. And it's not a very good situation if you are in Washington. And you may not be aware of this, Bo, but I actually did a public records request about 3 years ago and found out exactly how many commissioners had hunting licenses or were hunters that were serving on the commission, as of 2017. Turns out only one of the 9 commissioners at that time had a hunting license, and another one used to hunt, but it kind of aged out of the support. So you had 2 hunters on the commission out of 9, and I don't think the numbers have gotten any better. We're actually doing another public records request to see what the current status is of our Fish and Wildlife Commission. We got time for one more thing here. And that's this. What should folks do, in your opinion, as a guide who cares about the status of our elk herd in the Blue Mountains in both Oregon and Washington? What should our listeners do to help get the elk back?
First off, we should vote a commission in that represents us sportsmen, represents the return of the elk. The deer populations are significantly low, too, that no one really addresses. We should bring back predator hunting. We should bring back hound hunting. Limit it to significant houndsmen and go do their job and eradicate these cats. They're a major, major problem, John. It's dire what is happening with these cougars. They have free reign, okay? Then you factor in these other predators, and we need to have a significant change in our predator program, okay? So what I would tell people is I would just say eliminate all predators, period, okay? Now, we care about sows and cubs because we need to, okay? I encourage my spring bear hunters not to take sows, especially with cubs. I still like seeing the bear. We're not saying we have to eliminate everything, but I'm telling you, bears are a major problem down there. And to eliminate spring bear hunting is it's devastating to these elk herds. And, it starts at the top. Sportsmen should sue the state of Washington, the Fish and Wildlife, and the governor. And how about this, John? You've been putting in, just hypothetically, let's say for 10 years for a spring bear hunt, okay? Right? You're just waiting for that one tag, which people, same with elk, same thing. You wait for one tag for 20 years because our flawed draw system, we all know that. That's a different topic for a different day. But how about this? How about you get your money back that you put in for those years? Because Fish and Wildlife, they inject these people that have no business running a wildlife commission, dictating our seasons, and then you get your money back. And every other sportsman in the state of Washington gets all that money, but they're waiting for this one opportunity and we get that back. How about that?
Strong opinions, folks, from Bo Olson, the owner of Wilderness Expeditions LLC. Check out his Facebook page, Wilderness Expeditions LLC. And if you want to book a hunt with him in the Blues, even though opportunity is getting limited, go ahead and contact him through there. Bo, thanks for expressing your opinion today on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
John, appreciate it very much.
From a bull elk ripping a bugle across a valley to wing beats on a duck marsh, public lands and waters are integral to our outdoor heritage. Become a member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and stand up for our public lands and waters. Visit backcountryhunters.org today.
I'm gonna take you fishing, honey. You're gonna love it. Gonna get up before the sun rides above us. Got a bamboo pole and a leaky boat.
You're back in with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz, and we're going to catch up with one of my favorite people here in the Northwest. His name is Ryan Sparks, and I met him when he was fishing for the Oregon State University bass team. He worked for O'Loughlin trade shows after that, dove into the world of tournament bass fishing last year, and stalking him on his Facebook page, he's been a very, very busy man in the outdoors the last month or so. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I always love chatting with you.
Well, I want to share some of your recent adventures with our listeners. You have just been having a ball out there. Let's start off with your most recent adventure, a December smallmouth trip. Most people don't think of fishing for bass in December, but you were holding up a couple of stout smallies. Where were you at? How big were those fish?
Yeah, it's been really great in Oregon this year. I mean, of course, we've had kind of the oddball weather year, kind of got that little warmer weather pattern holding off into December. I could probably count in one hand the amount of bass I've caught in December in Oregon. You don't usually get those opportunities, but this year it's been kind of wide open. I've been out in the Willamette and the Columbia Bowl, fish all the way down from Newburgh up to about Salem on the Willamette, and the whole river has been really good. The water clarity is good. The river height is good. Flow is good. Temperature was around actually like 49 degrees, which is unbelievable for this time of year. And I mean, it's just your typical kind of finesse presentations, fishing drop shot, Ned rigs, some football hedges, just fishing slowly because those fish aren't super active like they are in spring and summer. But, I mean, I had a great time. I think my big fish was 4.6 pounds and caught multiple 2.5 to 3 pounders. One day I caught upwards of probably about 25 fish even.
You were showing off some even bigger fish than that from a November trip. Sturgeon, catch and release sturgeon fishing.
Yeah.
Were you on the Columbia or the Willamette, and how big were the sturgies you were catching?
Yeah, that was Willamette. I actually had one of my buddies flew down from Alaska, wanted to go catch one, never caught one before, so I took my bass boat out, which I really like to do just because of the way the electronics are set up on it. But yeah, we went out of the Willamette, kind of around the Portland area, and kind of just went and checked some of the bigger, deeper holes, kind of the community spots, went over them with the side scan, which is kind of like a structure scan with the graphs, and we're able to locate a couple of huge schools of fish. And we were just throwing herring with a sturgeon setup, which is pretty much the weight right on the bottom with a slider, and then the Dacron leader to like a 6/0 hook, I believe is what I was using for that. But yeah, we were catching multiple fish from 4 to 6 feet long. We had one oversized that was, I was to guess, probably about 8-footer.
Nice.
It was kind of muddy. It was during all that rain we got. We never could get real good pictures of it, but we could barely get the head out of the water. It was pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great opportunity this time of year, especially when the rivers blow out and there's no options to either go steelhead fish. Salmon's kind of done. Like I said, the bass fishing is dwindling off, but that sturgeon really heats up, especially around the Portland area where they all kind of come in and I guess rest for the winter.
No, you're right. As a matter of fact, I think in January, that's kind of like the only game in town, literally, is catch and release sturgeon fishing there on the Willamette. And you do get those occasional keeper days, so look out for those as well, folks, on both the Columbia and the Willamette, too. All right, we got to switch gears and talk hunting. You went to Montana, and you tagged out, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. No, it was real cool. That was my first ever Montana hunt. I went with one of my best friends. He invited me this year. Luckily, we both drew tags for it. They were just general deer tags, but you still have to draw them for the state of Montana. So I was very blessed on that. It was very cool. We went over, hunted the southeast side of the state. They've had a lot of droughts over there, so the deer population is down pretty low right now. So we were very fortunate. We both got real nice 4-point mule deer bucks. My buddy shot about a 160, and mine was about a 150 score on those. But no, it was fun. We hunted 4 days. The first 2 days, we were pretty much T-shirts, and you could have been in shorts if you wanted to. I think it was upwards of 70 to 75 degrees the first day, and when you're out there hiking around doing 10-plus miles a day, it was pretty brutal in that warm temperature, and those bucks definitely don't get pushing. But probably about by the 10th or so of November, the rut kind of started up, and they started pushing some does around, and we started seeing a few more bucks. But just absolutely beautiful country, and yeah, it was an incredible trip for me.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're catching up with Ryan Sparks. He is an avid hunter and fisherman and tournament bass angler about what's been going on in his world over the last couple of months. This Montana deer hunt, got to ask, number one, was it a DIY hunt on public land? And how did you go about planning for this, assuming you'd never been there before?
Yeah. So I got lucky. My buddy, like I said, he's actually hunted over there for about 20 years or so. And we were all on public land. We went over there, set up a walled tent. I think the duration of the trip were almost over there 10 days, and it might have been, 9, that we actually spent over there. But it was fun. We set up and did a lot of glassing. It's a lot of high country, so we're hiking up to some high ridges, glassing out, and just trying to spot animals and then stalk them from there. There's just so much area you can sit there and glass for hours and hours and not cover the whole thing. So it was all DIY. And like I said, I got lucky and went with someone that actually had been there before. But there are some good sections over in that southeast side of Montana, just the whole eastern side of Montana, of public land that you can go hunt just like that.
All right. Let's turn our attention to tournament bass fishing, which I know trips your trigger. Now, you're making a serious push to really get into this at more of a professional level last year, and you went to the Bass Nation regional qualifier at Lake Havasu last winter. Didn't go very well for you, but some of the subsequent tournaments you fished in went a whole lot better. What are your plans for 2022 when it comes to tournament bass fishing?
Yeah, what's amazing is Oregon has just a great schedule next year. Their Bass Nation Series, we're going to have 6 events this next year. Usually we do 4, but we're broadening our horizon, doing some stuff down in the southern parts of the state on Applegate and Lost Creek, which it'll be cool to see. We haven't been down there before. The TBS series is still doing a coastal series, which will be down to like 10 Mile and Silk Goose, and then they'll do a river series. Each one of those series has 4 tournaments in it, and then they're restarting the ABA for Oregon next year too. And I believe they have 6 to 8 events for that. So it's going to be a very busy schedule for the state of Oregon. I did qualify for regionals once again down at Havasu. The dates on that are the later half of February. It's around the 20th of February for that. And then I actually fished one bass at Clear Lake last year, and I kind of plan on doing that one again too. That was just a lot of fun to do.
Well, I wish you luck down at Havasu. That one hexed you last year, but hopefully you've got it figured out for this year. Because, folks, the Bass Nation, and we've had on the second place winner of the Bass Nation in terms of the championship. You go to the regionals, and what is it that you have to do to get in the championship? Do you have to make the top 2 out of your state, or is it how many people in the regional actually go to the championship?
Yeah. So it takes the Western Regional for each regional. Like just take the state of Oregon, for example. The top 10 anglers for the Angler of the Year points, so basically your 10 best anglers for the year, get sent to regionals. At regionals, you have to be the best out of the 10 from your state. So you're fishing against all the other states for the top flags, which they have a boat that you can win for that. But you're also fishing for your regional or your national ticket. So the person from your state that finishes first out of the 10 gets a ticket to go to the national Bassmaster tournament.
And folks, if you end up in the top 3 at the national championship, you earn a berth into the Bassmaster Classic. You also earn entry fees into all of the opens that you can fish too. And it's really a good way to punch your ticket from going to the weekend angler to going pro. And personally, Ryan, I am really hoping that you're going to punch that ticket. I would love to see you at the 2023 Bassmaster Classic.
Yeah, that has always been a dream for me, especially starting off in college, fishing the Bassmaster tournament through college. It's always been a big dream of mine, and that's why
I keep pushing towards the Nation Series because it's something here local I can do, yet still be able to go do it at a national level through all the qualifiers.
Well, I'm going to be rooting for you, but until then, here's hoping I get to see you at some of the Sportsman shows and catch up with you in person. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, and I love hearing about your adventures on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Awesome, John. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it.
One more thing I want to bring up here. If you want to serve up a delicious meal of wild-caught Alaskan seafood to family or friends this holiday season, well, it's last call. The last shipment before Christmas goes out on Monday from Sina Sea Seafoods, and you don't want to miss out on this. We're talking everything from king crab legs to world-famous Copper River sockeye salmon or Chinook salmon, coho salmon, halibut, sablefish, and don't forget the smoked salmon and the smoked spreads. We're talking smoked salmon spread, smoked halibut spread, smoked sablefish spread, and even salmon lox. It's all delicious. It's all wild-caught Alaskan seafood. And if you really want to go full bore, order the king crab legs. Simply the best crab legs you'll ever have in your life. But again, you've got to hurry. Last order before Christmas ships out on Monday the 20th. So order today. You can do so at SenaSea.com. I'll spell that for you. SENA. SEA.com. That's SenaSea.com for Sina Sea Seafoods, the best seafood you'll ever have. Stick around. Right after a word from our sponsors, we've got our Sportsman's Warehouse trivia question of the week.
It ain't much, but if you bail, it'll float. I'm gonna take you fishing, honey. You're gonna love it.
Nature at its finest. That's what you'll find in Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County. Paddle a kayak or go fishing at Wallowa Lake. Hike into the Eagle Cap Wilderness or soak in the views after taking the tram to the top of Mount Howard. Find out more at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
If your favorite season is deer, if your favorite salad is meat salad, if your favorite gifts come wrapped in fur or scales, if you're dreaming of a white and camo Christmas, then you'd fit right in at Sportsman's Warehouse. And lucky for you, Sportsman's is offering amazing deals all season long. So visit your local store or go online to sportsmans.com and gear up for an unforgettable holiday.
We've got time for one more shot of Northwestern Outdoors Radio with John Cruz.
We're exactly 1 week away from Christmas Day, and if you're like me, you probably don't have all of your shopping done, but I've got just the place for you to go, and you guessed where it is. It's your local Sportsman's Warehouse store with over 122 locations around the United States. There's bound to be one near you, and they're full of great gift ideas for the outdoors person in your life. As for me, I picked up some merino wool socks for several people I care about. And if you've got somebody who enjoys outdoors cooking, consider a 2-burner stove maybe, or Dutch ovens, or maybe even griddles from Camp Chef. You can't go wrong with that. If you've got a fisherman or fisherwoman in your life, a rod and reel combo is always a good bet, and lures are fantastic stocking stuffers. And as for the firearms owner that you care about, you and I both know that ammo is hard to come by, and that would be a great gift too. If you want more inspiration, just wander the aisles of a Sportsman's Warehouse store near you and then pick out some great gifts for Christmas. And now it's time for your Sportsman's Warehouse trivia question of the week, and yes, you guessed it, it's going to be Christmas related. I am guessing that you've probably got a Christmas tree in your house. Might be a big one, might be a small one, but you probably have one there. It's a big tradition in both homes and offices and stores at this time of year. Here's your question. In what country did the tradition of putting up a Christmas tree begin? Was it America? Was it England? Or was it Germany? If you know the answer, just go to our Facebook page at Northwestern Outdoors Radio. If you don't do Facebook, no worries. Just go to our website at northwesternoutdoors.com and shoot us an email with the answer to this question. In what country did the tradition of putting up a Christmas tree begin? Was it America, England, or Germany? One lucky person who guesses right wins that $25 gift card we give away every week from America's premier outfitter. As we wrap things up, I do hope the Christmas spirit is alive and well within you during this holiday season. During a time in our world where so many people are not kind, I hope you will be kind and gracious and patient. I also hope you'll take a moment to reach out to someone you haven't spoken to or written to in a while and wish them a Merry Christmas and let them know you're thinking of them. Finally, I hope you'll spend a little time thinking about the true meaning of Christmas, and that would be the birth of the Christ child Jesus, a birth which truly changed the world and gave all of us hope for salvation. Here's wishing you a very Merry Christmas, and here's hoping you are able to do all of these things in the days ahead.